Welcome to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM's POTUS.
Welcome to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM for Tuesday, November 26th. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined by RCP President and co-founder Tom Bevan and Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon. So, gentlemen, on Monday, the judge overseeing Donald Trump's election interference case put it to rest after Special Counsel Jack Smith filed a motion for dismissal, citing the DOJ's presidential immunity policy. So, Tom, this is a big win for the president-elect, but not totally unexpected. What's the political impact, if any, at this point, do you think?
It sort of brings an end to the lawfare efforts that were orchestrated to try and keep President Trump from effectively, being elected. And they failed, clearly. And so this is just the aftermath of that. I think it represents victory for Trump. And obviously, folks on the left are upset about it and think that he's getting away with whatever. And I think folks on the right look at this and think it's, again, it's good that these lawfare efforts failed. But that doesn't mean we won't see them again. I mean, the question is what happened in the last election? Was that unique to Trump and will never happen again? Or is the genie out of the bottle and this will become the new normal, using lawsuits and the court system to try and, go after your political opponents?
Yeah. Well, Carl, there is talk of investigating the investigators, right? I mean, there is this chapter is over, but it does seem like it will continue into the Trump administration.
Well, we'll see. Maybe the president will, accept victory. Jack Smith, the prosecutor, who until this case had a reputation as a very respectable career prosecutor in the Justice Department, he had two things going against him. The first, of course, was this Supreme Court decision that held that a president doing his duties in the course of his duties couldn't be held criminally liable. And Trump argued that questioning the election in the way he did was part of his duties. That question was never litigated, whether these actions that the former president took after the election day in 2020, right up until January 6th, constitute his official duties. Jack Smith was prepared to bring a case saying that they didn't. He was redoing the indictment and had to tailor it. So we don't. That question is, because Jack Smith dropped the charges, it's moot, but it's still out there. And the other thing, the real thing he had going against him, and I'll pick up on what Tom was saying, is that Trump won the election. And the American people have spoken. And a lot of the Democrats, and I'm not including Jack Smith in this group, is a career prosecutor, but the lawfare, that's the term Tom's used, I've used it myself in New York and in Georgia. These were designed to either, we were never quite sure. Some Democrats wanted to make sure that Trump was the nominee because they thought he could beat him. Other Democrats didn't want him to be eligible to run for president. He beat all that. Not only that, and this is a long-winded answer to your question, Andy, but lawfare backfired. It actually it apparently helped Trump. And that's the part that I hope the Democrats take to heart. And I would hope Donald Trump takes to heart because it was done to him. Now, if he does it to his opponents, maybe that would backfire also.
Yeah, I mean, and when we say backfire, it sort of backfired in two ways. One, politically, it put him back in the spotlight at a time, and the American people, like you say, sort of, rallied around him to a large extent, because when he stood up and said, they're coming after me, but they're coming after you next, that had a certain ring of, if not truth, prophecy about it. And then the other thing, of course, is the Supreme Court made this ruling that sort of strengthens any president's hand going forward. But Tom, there is this final report that Jack Smith is trying to get out before January 20th. I guess that he has to do it by then. Will that see the light of day, do you think, and will it have any political impact?
Well, the answer to the second part is no. I don't think it'll have any political impact. Will it see the light of day? Maybe. I mean, we'll see. But going back to what you just said, Andy, I mean, I think it bears repeating that, and what Carl said, you go all the way back to the primary. Ron DeSantis, when he started his campaign, was within 10 to 15 points of Trump, depending on which poll you looked at. The day that he was indicted, day after he was indicted by Alvin Bragg in that first case, his lead doubled, went up to 25 to 30 points. It absolutely galvanized Republican voters, even those who were open to someone else, to Donald Trump, and effectively shut down the primary channels. Now, DeSantis had a lot of problems after that, and I think his general theory of the case wasn't correct. But that was the moment the race shifted, and it was over. And so Democrats effectively guaranteed that Trump was the nominee, which, as Carl said, some of them thought was a good thing. And even throughout the entire campaign, all of these efforts seemed to just make him stronger and seem to not only galvanize hardcore Trump supporters, but win over even moderates who thought that the Democrats had gone too far.
Yeah. Carl?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that was the environment in which Donald Trump is shot and nearly killed in Butler, Pennsylvania. His ear is bleeding. He stands up and he says, "Fight, fight, fight." And I think there's a critical mass of independent voters who thought at that time, you know what, they've done everything to Trump. Now they're even trying to kill him. What are they so afraid of? And I think all of this served Trump's narrative well and helped him win the election.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Biden folks for a moment here, because even as a lame duck, he's making some moves. One thing he's proposed is that Ozempic and Wegovy, these two weight loss drugs, be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. He just announced this the other day. Good news, I guess, for seniors and Medicaid recipients who want to lose weight, but the cost is estimated to be $35 billion over the next 10 years. And Carl, it's opposed by RFK Jr. So Carl, is Biden sort of setting up a clash with RFK right out of the box?
Well, the secretary, Xavier Becerra, announced this, and RFK is going to replace him. And you can see how little he thinks of that by this little stink bomb that he threw into the process. And, Andy, those estimates, it's going to be a lot more money than that because the country's getting older and getting fatter. And so however many people need to lose weight now, it'll be more 5 years from now, unless Bobby Kennedy Jr. gets us all on eating, kale, salads, and unprocessed foods. This is the kind of thing I wrote in my morning newsletter on Tuesday. We only have one president at a time, and this, and Tom and I and you have talked about, since July, is Biden's not up to running for re-election. Should he be allowed to be in office for 6 months? Well, looks like he's going to make that, and he spoke Tuesday about this deal in the Middle East of Hezbollah and the negotiations between Israel and Hezbollah. He'd like to do something there to make that happen. He's seems to have sabotaged the border, Trump's border plans by expediting these visas. And as Tom's pointed out, and you and I, the three of us have talked about, he's allowing escalation in Ukraine with American arms there that, Andy, you and I think will actually maybe help Trump get a negotiated truce there, a détente of some sort. Tom fears it may lead to World War III, but in any event, he's doing all these things, and you don't know what the motivations are. Maybe it's to make it more difficult for Trump. Maybe it's to try and get in the last things he believes in. But whatever it is, you know what? He's the president. And I think that the White House is well within their rights and their duties to be governing right up until the last moment.
I just find it so ironic. I mean,
wait, you disagree with me, Tom?
Shock. No, I mean, the guy went basically MIA for the last 15 weeks. I mean, he showed up at the convention, the Democrats' convention, and then disappeared. Wasn't doing anything. Wasn't saying anything. Wasn't doing anything. Didn't do anything in September. Didn't do anything in October. And Kamala Harris loses the election, and suddenly he's like whirs back into into action.
It galvanized him, Tom. Woke him up.
Making all of these decisions that are going to have let's say adverse impacts for the next administration. I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. I guess you're right. He is president. He has the authority to act until January 20th of next year. But it just strikes me as ironic because he had checked out. He was on the beach. He was, literally not doing anything. I think he held like two public events in the entire month of August. So, but as to this decision itself, I just find it also ironic that we as a country, I mean, this is sort of, in my mind, emblematic of all the things that are wrong. Like, the way the government had sort of screwed up the food pyramid, and, we've been telling our people to, eat carbs and making them fat, and they get fatter. And then the answer is, well, we'll just drug them. We'll just give them drugs. And there's no, it's not about exercise. It's not about eating healthy. It's like, here's $50 billion worth of, pharma. I mean, this is all going to benefit big pharma and the companies that are making these drugs, right? So we're just going to pay them billions and billions of dollars to get drugs, which we can then give away effectively via Medicare and Medicaid to our fat citizens.
Oh,
Andy,
just a minute.
Break the tie here.
Just a minute. Well, two cheers for Ozempic, because I haven't seen this, so I'm just speculating, but I imagine that if you did the cost benefit analysis and said, what does Ozempic mean in terms of diabetes, in terms of, other health related heart failure, that sort of thing, that it may end up saving us money over time. The price of the drug may come down. I'm not sure, given how bad the problem is right now in the country, that there isn't a sort of all of the above policy here. I'm kind of a drill baby drill on this. I mean, let's get the Ozempic going, and let's get people eating kale and exercising. Let's do the whole thing. That's
Bobby Kennedy's uncle introduced us to the 50-mile hike. I think we should bring that back too.
Right.
Okay, Tom.
Right. Yeah, I mean, seriously,
politics. Sorry, Tom.
If the choice is, you got to exercise every day and eat kale, or you can just take this pill. I mean, we are a notoriously undisciplined country, and we'll take the easy way.
Oh, well, we got to move on, but they didn't run on this, which is interesting. This was not part of their campaign, but so I don't know where it comes from at this point. But anyway, we're going to leave it there, guys. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and we'll be back right after this.
This is Real Clear Politics on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124. Welcome back to Real Clear Politics
on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Tom Bevan and Carl Cannon. And Tom, we have some news from inside Trump world, and that is that long-term Trump insider and aide Boris Epshteyn is in hot water, accused of trying to monetize his proximity to the president-elect. Specifically, he asked the new Treasury Secretary nominee for payment to talk him up around Mar-a-Lago. Epshteyn denies the accusation. Tom, we know all people in Washington sell access from time to time, or it seems to be that way. What makes this accusation different than the run-of-the-mill swampiness that is standard practice inside the Beltway?
Well, I'm not sure how different it is from a lot of the swampiness. You're paying for, access to and influence with the principal, whoever that principal, in this case, it's Donald Trump. But it seemed like it's unseemly that he's out trying to shake people down for money based on, their desire to work for the administration. And, Trump responded in an interview with Just the News, and he said, quote, "I suppose every president has people around them who try to make money off them on the outside. It's a shame, but it happens. But no one working for me in any capacity should be looking to make money. They should only be here to make America great again." So, and he said, "No one can promise or endorse any endorsement or nomination I make. I make those decisions on my own, period." So, look, it's just another example of I think someone who was close to Trump, who was trying to cash in on their proximity to the president. And as he said, it happens. It's not the first time we've ever heard of something like this, and probably not the last. Carl, you're shaking your head.
Carl, what do you think?
You two guys are very forgiving. I'm kind of shocked.
You want the death penalty for this guy.
You said it's unseemly, that it's corrupt is what it is. Let's call it what it is.
It is not illegal, though. This isn't a criminal investigation. We should point out to people that this is not.
You can say that if you want to. I know nothing about this that strikes me that it's legal. One of the allegations is that a defense contractor was being talked to in the transition, and this defense contractor was told by Boris Epshteyn that he would get the implication would get defense contracts if he contributed money to Epstein's consulting firm. There was a congressman from Duke named Duke Cunningham.
Come on now. You mean someone in Washington was saying, hey, you should pay me a consulting contract. I will help you get a contract. That's what K Street does, right?
Well,
I will get this law change for you. I will introduce you to this person. I will introduce you to that person.
I hope if I'm ever charged with a crime, you two fellas are on my jury, because you seem to have the forbearance you're showing. Listen, Epstein denies that this happened, so I don't know that it happened. But if it did happen, no, I believe you're mistaken. Getting defense contracts, there are very strict rules about how you do that, and there was a congressman named Duke Cunningham who was an ace in Vietnam, a war hero, and he went to prison for a long time for shaking down defense contractors. So this to me, I think he's going to be drummed out of Trump world, would be my guess. And the other thing is that it underscores another question. Who is this guy? How did he even get where he is? It turned out
he's an attorney. He's been an advisor to Trump during the campaign. His firm was getting a $50,000 a month payment for communications and legal advice.
The answer to wrong. The answer to the question is that he went to college with Eric Trump, and this idea that whenever we find some sketchy character, they have a connection to Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump. This is a new administration. It's all in front of them. They won this unexpected and decisive victory, and I would think they'd want to be above reproach on this kind of thing. And when your motto is drain the swamp, Andy and Tom, I don't think a good defense is, but this is swampy. That's how the swamp works.
Well, Carl, it's still Washington, D.C., and I admire your pristine view of how legislation gets made in Washington, but that hasn't been my experience. But Tom, like I say, this is not a criminal investigation. And personally, Carl, I know we may disagree with that. I don't think that what he did is, on the surface, any worse than a lot of people do all the time. But it looks like someone in Trump world thinks this is a bad idea, because that's the way this kind of stuff gets out. Someone put this out, right?
I think this goes back to the old saw, like the scandal in Washington is what's legal, not what's illegal. It's what is allowed. And so that's part of, but I think Carl's right and you're right. Number one, Trump came in to drain the swamp. That was part of his initial promise. And when he left Washington in 2020, the swamp was nowhere near drained. In fact, it might even been swampier than when he took office in the first place. Now, some of that's his fault in being new and being novice and not being surrounded by people who were loyal to him, and I think a lot of hangers-on who are looking to make money, et cetera, et cetera. So, we'll see whether this is a different Trump. And it's certainly the way that this was handled, sort of distancing themselves immediately from it, saying this is unfortunate and I make all these decisions myself, indicates that they are going to treat it differently this time around. And certainly with the way that they've aggressively hired these or chosen these cabinet picks, and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy looking to just go to town on the federal bureaucracy, I think this is a whole different ballgame. And so it's not a great look, but looks like it's a minor story, not a major one.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should just to clarify one more time. This is not a criminal investigation, as much as Carl would like it to be.
You sound like Boris's lawyer, Andy.
Yeah. Well, I'm just. Why do you keep saying that? This is the fifth time you said that. What are you worried about?
Because I watched a lot of the coverage of this today, and I think that if you were a lay listener or a lay watcher of television, you would think that there was something truly nefarious going on here. And I'm just, I guess, so jaded that I don't think that's true. And besides the point, he's he's denied it. So, Carl, we do have, though, a preview of what might be a trade war that's coming up starting January 20th. Trump, once again, he promised to put a 25% tariff on all products from Mexico and Canada, saying this will remain in place until the flow of migrants and illegal drugs is stopped. Mexican president responded saying that they would retaliate with tariffs of their own. Carl, this is what Trump promised to do, but it looks like it may get ugly. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, Trump is using tariffs as a stick, and a carrot, both. But it's not merely trade. Now he's linking things that have, little to do with trade to it. Foreign migrants coming in. Why he added Canada to it? I maybe he was offended by Justin Trudeau dancing badly at a Taylor Swift concert while Montreal was having a riot, a pro-Hamas riot. I don't know what Canada did, but this, this thing reminds me when Trump's never liked NAFTA, right? And under NAFTA, United States, Canada, and Mexico were kind of one entity. It was like our version of the EU. Trump's never liked that. He has a more nationalist idea of trade policy. But it reminds me, there was one. Bill Clinton was president. The Prime Minister of Canada. They were in the Rose Garden. Sarah McClendon, remember her, Andy?
Oh yeah,
salty old bird from Texas, and she yells out to Clinton. She didn't like NAFTA either. She was a Perot type. What about all these drugs coming here from NAFTA? And the Canadian Prime Minister goes, oh, yeah, that's great. Free trade, and starts talking. And Clinton just turns to him and glares at him and said, she said drugs. And he goes, oh, I heard trucks. But Trump hears trucks and thinks drugs. So we've come full circle.
Well, Tom, what do you make of this? And what is, here's one thing which he promises these sort of blanket tariffs. And to me, this is sort of like a little bit like the flat tax. You can say, okay, it's going to be a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, 10% on China. But inevitably, there are going to be all sorts of exceptions. And I guess if the theme of today is swampiness, there's nothing more swampy than lobbying over trying to get tariffs put on other people or lifted from your own sector.
Sure. Look, this is classic Trump, and I think the threats are real. He has imposed tariffs in the past, so there's no reason to think that he wouldn't do this again. He did have a phone call earlier today with Justin Trudeau. Trudeau came out and basically said, got his attention, right? Said, we had a good conversation and we're ready to work together to solve some of these issues. And, I think the shot across the bow was acknowledged by the Trudeau administration. And so we'll see. We'll see exactly. I mean, Canada, people don't realize, or maybe they do, but Canada, is our largest trading partner. I mean, they buy more from us than anybody else. As the Canadian government promptly pointed out when Trump, issued this threat. So we'll see. But I mean, certainly, if he were just to slap a 25% tariff on everything, that would probably not be a good thing, and it would cost Americans a lot more for a lot of things that we are used to paying, less for, and that would not be a good thing. So we'll see.
Right.
If he's using them as
right
a
at Christmas, we get Christmas trees from Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much avocados are going to cost for your guacamole, Carl?
Yeah. Well,
Navidad is going to be.
I know
really
the Christmas tree will be more expensive from Canada. The guac from Mexico will be priced out of sight. Oh no!
It's also autos from Mexico and a few other things. But anyway, I guess we're going to stay tuned. This is going to be very interesting because there will be retaliation or threats of retaliation. That's, I guess, the way these things start. And as I said before, the swamp will be in full bloom with people trying to make sure that their particular industry is exempt from tariffs or tariffs are put on their competitors. Anyway, you're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Tom Bevan and Carl Cannon. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, Tom's going to be here with Sean Trende. So don't go away.
This is Real Clear Politics on POTUS, Sirius XM Channel 124.
Not bound by any left-right constructs.
Real Clear Politics, open to a wide political spectrum.
This is POTUS on Sirius XM Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP. Joined on the phone now by Sean Trende. He's our senior elections analyst. Mr. Trende, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Doing great. Settling into a little post-election, sort of, getting ready for the holidays. It's nice. It's nice that we don't have all of this excess drama that, quite frankly, I thought we were going to have. So I'm thankful for that. Let's talk about a couple things. So California, for some strange reason, Sean, we are 3 weeks after the election, and they are continuing to count votes. We still have a couple races out there that have not been called. Why does it take so long for California to count these votes?
I don't entirely know. So you're talking about how we were getting a post-election lull, and I was like, well, almost there. Because California is, as you're saying, like, it still has like 1 or 2% of the votes. But part of it is that it's a big vote by mail state. And it's a big state. So it gets millions and millions and millions of ballots in. And those ballots only have to be postmarked by Election Day. So, if you put your ballot in the mail on Election Day, it's not even going to get to the election center until 2-3 days after the election. Well, then they have to go through. And the thing about mail balloting is that it's really slow, because every ballot, you have to take it out of the envelope. You have to match the signature. You have to feed it through the machine. Like, all that has to be done manually. And when you're talking about millions and millions and millions of ballots, it's very labor intensive. Now, the contrary side is Arizona has certified its results. And it's a big vote by mail state.
Right.
Nevada is a big vote by mail state. So why can't California get its stuff together and get it done?
It's amazing to me. I mean, okay, fine. So maybe it takes a week, 10 days. I mean, even that, maybe there should be changes to the law. Like the ballots have to be received by Election Day, which is actually true in a lot of states. Or they're no good. They don't get counted. So whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like third worldish that we're sitting here 3 weeks after the election, and there's still some races that have not been called. That just does not seem right. All right.
No,
well,
the third world gets their ballots done on Election Day.
That's true.
Even like you think about countries that were supposed to be like France and Germany and all these like there's none of this. When they have elections, we know the next day who the person is. It's really just flabbergasting.
It really is. And I don't know. We got to get it fixed somehow. I'm not saying we need a federal law for that. And obviously we have 50 states and they all do it differently, but some do it way better than others. And we need to have a best practices task force or something to get California to get going. Anyway, all right, enough on that. Let's shift gears and talk about something that you wrote about for our newsletter, the RCP Takeaway. It's on RealClearPolling.com. You can find it there. And Sean, it's basically, the title on this is that 2024 was just a rehash of 2022. And you go through and you make your case by looking at some specific states and counties. So give our listeners a sense of why this election reminded you or the results came in and look a lot like they did just a couple of years ago.
Well, I think 2022 was an interesting election to me because there's no doubt it was a disappointing election for Republicans, but it had been turned by media types and some of these Democratic analysts into the supposed disaster for Republicans. And yeah, I mean, they underperformed and they had some bad candidates, but at the same time, they won the popular vote by 3 points.
People forget that or don't know it.
Yeah, it's, and so, yeah, we thought the Republicans were going to win by 5 or 6 and pick up 20 or 30 seats, and they ended up winning by 3 and picking up 10 seats. But that's good for the party. And so I was looking at this time like, hey, the Republicans' national vote share, they're winning the popular vote by 3 points. And Donald Trump is winning by 1.5 points. And so my basic idea was let's take the like 4 states that people are making a lot of noise about: New York, Texas, New Jersey, and Virginia, and kind of see, do things match up? And as it turns out, in most of these states, in most of the counties, the vote shares for 2024 are very, very similar to 2022.
That would sort of argue against the idea, right, that we have been told that Trump is somehow unique and brings out all these extra Republican voters that don't turn out in midterms. They only turn out to vote for him, right? I mean, that sort of is a little bit, throws a little cold water on that thesis.
Yeah, people are shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, the Republicans won, Donald Trump lost New Jersey by like 5 or 6 points. And I'm thinking to myself, well, in 2021, the Republican gubernatorial candidate lost the state by 3 points. And when you look at it, I mean, Donald Trump ran a little worse in southern Jersey, a little better in North Jersey. Now, the one thing that stands out is that Donald Trump did do substantially better among Hispanic voters.
Right.
Than the previous, but that's also been a long-term shift. So I think that it should be a warning flag for Democrats that, hey, this isn't just about Donald Trump and his swagger and his popularity and all that other stuff. These are voters who have been trending Republican for quite some time, and it looks like some of the old coalition, from the Clinton years, is finally breaking down.
And what does that say, Sean? Let's just assume that the thesis is correct, that this is a broader thing. It's bigger than Trump. It's more tectonic, if you will, in terms of the political landscape. How might that change the map here? I know you mentioned these 4 states, and obviously Texas is one that Democrats have been talking about wanting to turn blue forever and ever and ever. New Jersey's one that I remember George W. Bush thinking he was going to win New Jersey back in 2000. Trump had an event there this year that was very well attended, and I think Wildwood, and he talked about wanting to win that state. And then Virginia's a state that not so long ago was very, very competitive. Not so long ago a Republican stronghold, and now is more blue than purple. But how do these shifts? I mean, how would the map look in a cycle or two if these kinds of shifts continue to materialize?
Yeah, it's a real puzzle. You could see a red New Jersey. I think the big thing is that for the longest time, the Democrats had kind of assumed that demographics were destiny, right? This is something I've been arguing about for 14 years.
There was a famous book about it, actually.
Yeah. Lost Majority. You can get it for $0.01 on Amazon Marketplace last time I checked. But no, look, this really takes the wind out of the sails, because the way they had thought they were going to flip Texas was with the growth of the Hispanic population. Well, all of a sudden, the Hispanic population in Texas is 50-50. You can grow 50-50 indefinitely, and you're not going to flip the state. Republicans took on some water with suburban voters, but it looks like Trump stanched the bleeding there. So this is something that could really cause some problems for Democrats if the Republicans can keep it going and flip some of these states like New Jersey or maybe solidify their hold on a place like Wisconsin or Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it is. It certainly seems, Sean, we got just about a minute left, and I'll let you have the last word here, that the gains that Trump made among Hispanics, but also just in general among sort of working class voters, Democrats, if they're not able to sort of, reestablish that connection, somehow reconnect with those voters, I mean, this could have serious consequences for them in a bunch of different states. I mean, this is not some small thing or some isolated, issue that they can contain. This is something that could affect them literally everywhere.
Yeah, you start talking about states like what's going to happen in New Mexico, or it's part of why Trump was able to run so well in Nevada. I mean, the Hispanic population is growing, and it is everywhere. And so the Republicans pulling 50-50 with them. That was something Democrats had kind of counted on to buttress their coalition. So swinging that population. Now we'll see, if Trump does, make good on his promise to use the military to deport, people in the country illegally, and there will almost certainly be mistakes made. But it's not like his promises there were unknown, right? These are people who heard those promises and voted Republican anyway. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Republicans have control of government now, and so it is incumbent on them to govern well. And if they don't, in 2 years, the voters are going to say, you had your chance. We're going to try someone else.
Yep. All right. We will leave it there. Sean Trende, senior elections analyst for Real Clear Politics. Sean, always great to talk to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM after this.
Online at RealClearPolitics.com.
On air on SiriusXM Channel 124.
Real Clear Politics is on POTUS. Welcome back to Real Clear Politics with Andrew Walworth. You're listening to SiriusXM's POTUS, Channel 124.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm talking with John Feehery now. He's the Republican strategist and a principal at the firm EFB Advocacy. We turn to John every now and then for his wisdom about what's going on the Hill. So, John, welcome to the program.
Hey, great to be with you.
So let's start with Speaker Johnson. His majority in the House is getting pretty narrow. Every time a House member leaves to join the Trump administration, it leaves one less member in his caucus, at least until the special elections roll out. How worried is he, and how worried should he be about this shrinking majority?
Well, Sam Rayburn used to always say he'd rather have a 1-seat majority than a 100-seat majority because you get better discipline. And in 2002, we had a 1-seat majority, 221, and it was hard. It's hard because anyone can fly off the handle, and for someone like Speaker Johnson, you have guys like Eli Crane and folks who just don't want to listen to you. His biggest problem, it used to be our biggest problem, were the moderates. I think his biggest problem is going to be the conservatives. And that's going to be something that he's going to have to kind of kick up the food chain and get President Trump to kind of deal with. And when you're speaker, really what you're trying to do, if you have a president of your own party, is implement the president's agenda. And there's just going to take a lot of communication, a lot of heartache, a lot of, as my old boss Denny Hess used to say, the job of a speaker is actually more of a job of listener, and he's going to have to listen to all the kind of bitching and moaning that comes from a lot of members who think that they know all the answers. He's going to have to say, listen, this is what Donald Trump wants. This is what he won the election. He's president. If we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately and try to kind of convince him. But it's definitely not an easy thing. And you could already see some folks who are worried about the deficit and don't necessarily want to do tax cuts. And there's going to be some folks who don't really want to do any of these large spending cuts that are going to come from the Doge. So we'll see how that all works out.
Yeah. Well, one thing he can't be too upset about is that his friend Matt Gaetz is not there in the House with them anymore. What's next for Matt Gaetz, do you think?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. He seems to be doing Cameo now, which is, I think hopefully he's going to be doing, from his perspective, doing something different. Gaetz' specific problem was with Kevin McCarthy. He never really had that big of a problem with Mike Johnson. And he's a pretty talented guy. He's a smart guy. I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration found a role for him somewhere in the Justice Department that's not confirmable, and said go and get all these people who tried to screw you. He's obviously got some a chip on his shoulder about what happened to him with the Justice Department and the Ethics Committee. The thing about Gaetz is he went around Capitol Hill doing a series of videos, basically calling his colleagues corrupt, and nothing that his colleagues liked less than that, than being called corrupt by Matt Gaetz. And so they were happy to see him go. But he's a MAGA figure, and he's pretty articulate, pretty smart guy. So I wouldn't think that we're going to see the last of him.
Yeah, you mentioned Cameo. It's pretty interesting. Cameo, if people don't know, it's this app where you can actually hire people to do your phone message or wish you a happy birthday. And his going rate apparently is $500, which is pretty high for Cameo, as I understand it. But I guess, you do a couple of those a day, it all adds up.
Andrew, if you want to do, my birthday is December 11th, so I'd love to have a cameo from Matt Gaetz. I think it'd be hilarious.
Okay, well, what you have to do is you have to start a GoFundMe page, get your money. Anyway, I'm talking to John Feehery, a Republican consultant up on the Hill and strategist. One thing I wanted to ask you about was usually the House goes the way of the presidency, and here we have Trump sort of, wins the popular vote, electoral college, over 300 electoral college votes. But the House didn't really move that much. If anything, I think the Democrats picked up a couple of seats, right? So, or certainly looks that way now as these people leave to go work in the administration. Do you have any theory as to why that would happen? Why did the Republicans pick up more House seats?
Well, part of it was redistricting. Part of it, they lost a couple of seats because of Supreme Court decisions to add an extra seat in Louisiana and Alabama. And then they lost some seats in New York that I think they thought they were going to get, that they were going to keep. They had been redistricted, and then there's a new one that made the seats slightly more Democratic, and they just couldn't hold on. So I think they lost 3 of the 4 seats that they thought they were going to keep. And then they lost a couple seats in California. And, the California is always, they're still counting votes in a couple of those seats. Right. So it's a real challenge. But your bigger question is a good one. Why didn't they do better than they thought? And I think part of the reason was because they didn't do much. They spent 2 years doing almost nothing. They had almost no accomplishments. They had nothing for their members to run on other than kind of get their hands on Donald Trump's coattails. And if you don't have anything to say to your voters, then you're probably going to you're not going to do better than you think. And, I think that abortion, tripped up some of these guys, but I really think that their biggest problem was it was a very dysfunctional Congress. And if you, get rid of your speaker and spend most of your time trying to find a new speaker, the dysfunction became kind of a problem for the House Republicans. And, the other issue, they didn't get a lot of accomplishments because it was a divided government. But they could have finished some appropriation bills. They could have done something on the budget, and they could have done something, and they did nothing. And so I think that the voters didn't like that as much. And I think what they liked about Trump is the fact that he was going to come in and do some real change and offer a real vision and of things that he wanted to do. And the House Republicans just didn't do anything.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. And there were people like, I remember Nancy Mace saying back in January, I guess, that, we've lost the majority. We're just waiting to count the votes. That there is an argument that they did much better than they might have or should have given their performance over the past 2 years. But let's talk about someone else who lost. That's Lori Chavez-DeRemer. She was a Republican from Oregon. She is now the nominee to be the head of the Labor Department. Apparently, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien was pushing for her, but she's viewed as being a bit more pro-labor than previous Republican picks. Well, what do you make of the choice, and what does it say about the direction of the Trump administration on labor issues?
Well, clearly Trump wanted to, tell Sean O'Brien that he's with him, right? I think I like her a lot. I like her personally. She's a very good person, very affable. I think that the problem that you have is you have a pro-labor secretary going to have to do battle with an anti-labor, especially anti-government employee union efforts to get rid of spending. And that's going to be a clash. And, the government labor unions don't want to work 5 days a week. They don't want to go back to work. They certainly don't want to get fired for being ineffective. And all these efficiency measures are something that the unions do not like. So it's going to be very interesting to see which side she's going to be on. Is she going to be on the side of the unions, or is she going to be on the side of Doge? And I don't know the answer to the question. I hope that she's on the side of Doge because I'm a taxpayer and I'm really sick of paying for government that doesn't do anything.
All right. Well, John, we're going to have to leave it there. Hey, thanks for being here. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth on behalf of Carl, Tom, and everyone at Real Clear Politics. We'll be back here tomorrow. Have a great evening, and we'll see you then.
The
Politics
of
the
United States.
This is POTUS on Sirius XM Channel 124.